What's up, guys? Here on episode number 3 of the Life 100 podcast, got my great friend Randall Funston. I almost called you by your nickname, man. I had to be really careful. So, man, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Are you nervous?
A little bit.
A little bit? You're like a kid in a candy store over there. Just relax, man. It's okay. It's okay. By the way, for those of you watching, Randall is a pilot. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But Randall came in over to my Roadcaster and started pushing buttons. And he goes, man, I pushed all these buttons and nothing happened. So next time I fly with Randall, I'm going to push every button that I can find and see if anything happens. That's what you get for that. Okay.
Perfect.
Fair enough. All right, man. Easy enough. Well, it's good to have Randall here today. Randall and I have been friends for many, many years. For those of you that know about my aviation journey, if you will, Randall is the one responsible for selling me 4 of my 5 planes now, and better than that, we've just been great friends. We've had some good times over the years together, and being that he's in North Carolina, I thought it'd be great to interview him because he's got a really interesting story. So I want to start out again. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. Glad you'll be able to be a part of this. Let's talk about your background a little bit. So you are, what is your official title at Van Bortle?
Aircraft sales manager.
Aircraft sales manager. It sounds important. So you oversee how many airplane, like in inventory? How many aircraft are in inventory at most time?
It can range. We've had as many as 125 at one point.
Wow.
Usually it could, 60, 70.
Right. And how long has Van Bortle been in business?
Almost 40 years.
Wow. One of the largest Cessna dealers in the country, I guess, right?
They're pretty much one of the only, there's a lot of brokers out there. There's not a lot of dealers. Dealer meaning you're not just dealing new airplanes. Textron goes direct, but a lot of people still choose to buy through us. But we own our inventory. So that's what's different about us and other people that sell airplanes.
Very cool. And there's a neat story with Van Bortle. So when I was looking for an airplane, I was trying to find who to buy from. I knew nothing about airplanes other than to add a propeller on the front, and I was going to try to figure out how to fly one. So being a newbie, if you will, I didn't know anything about it. So I looked for the most, reputable dealer there was, and I came across Van Bortle, and there was one thing that was different than any other dealer that on the market, anybody else that I looked at. There was one thing that separated Van Bortle from everybody else. And so tell the listeners about what makes you guys so unique.
They've always specialized in low time, pristine, always hangar, no damage airplanes. So it is a part to have the best airplanes. It's that is nice to have as far as in what we do, but there's a reason behind it too, as far as resale value and all that other stuff. It's at the end of the day, it's hard to overpay for a good airplane, and you can't, usually buy a bad one cheap enough. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's just, so good airplanes, our shop goes all the way through them. It's kind of like buying a certified Lexus or something. It's one thing if you break down in a car, but you don't really pull over in an airplane. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to do that.
And there's you got bulletins, service bulletins that are, not necessarily required, but so a lot of people skip them, and we like a lot of those. We like to catch up and all that stuff where it goes to the customer. So
yeah, but there's one other point that's really important that I think that sets Van Bortle apart from everybody else: the warranty.
The return. Yeah. So if you buy it and close on it, you literally have a month. If you're not happy with it, bring it back and you get all your money back. So
right.
We just rather versus having somebody in the airplane that's not happy with it. We'd rather just have it back sold to somebody else.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Word of mouth reputation is really important.
It just seems odd. That's just such an industry specific thing. It's so different to see that, to be able to buy a plane. If you don't like it for whatever reason, you bring it back and they give you your money back. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, and the way, even when it started, when Howard started the company, he started with one airplane, and he started on his on a coffee table in his sister's living room, I believe. And,
that's crazy.
He sold an airplane, then sold another one. I think it was like the second or third one he sold, wound up having some engine issue. It cost like $2,000 or something like that. And he might have had 2,500 in the bank. My numbers might be slightly off, but it was just under what he had total. And he cut the check for it.
That's crazy.
And the rest is history. So
that's crazy. I know with me, I bought my plane, and this is not an advertisement for Van Bortle, but I believe in a strong network. And if you've got, reputable business with somebody, you've done some business over the years, I think it's important to share that with folks. And so my first plane, I bought before I had my pilot's license, and it wasn't a few months into my training that the engine needed to be replaced. And so I didn't know what to do, honestly. And Van Bortle stepped up. They did. They stepped up. They not only fixed the plane, but I ended up having another plane to be able to fly and get my license. And man, they made it right. It was great. And so I've had nothing but amazing experiences. Despite you being the sales guy, I've had some great experiences.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be a fault somewhere. So, but
No,
that's a really good example, and that
it is.
doesn't happen very often. What happened to you? I mean, because
No,
that
it was
engine
rare.
that probably cost us $60,000. And,
Yeah.
that's obviously we don't make that much money on the airplanes or whatever.
No.
But we sold you 3 more airplanes after that. And, it's all about the
4 more.
4 more.
4 more. Yeah.
It's all about the relationship. So
it really is. It's crazy because, an engine in a car might be 20 grand, 25 grand, but an engine in an airplane is like 80, 100 grand. Like,
which is crazy because the car engine is far more technologically advanced than an airplane engine. That's 1950s technology, but they're so much more expensive.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And so it was definitely a scary thing. And they didn't know. They had no way to know. My plane was a very low hour airplane. It was just a freak thing. But like I said, they stood behind it, took care of me. The owner of the company called me, and it was just an amazing experience. And so that definitely kicked it off. And that was the first of, I'm now on my 5th plane with you guys. And so 2 182s and 3 400s now. And so I know you're over there thinking, what can I sell him next? I'm hoping nothing, but I know the guy to go to if I need something. So anyway, Van Bortle is a great Cessna dealer. If you're in the market for something like that, definitely look out to them. But let's talk a little bit more about you and your history, right? This isn't a Van Bortle advertisement, although it kind of sounds like one. So maybe George can send me a check. But but this is really about you. So we've been friends for some time. We talk on I would say a very regular basis. We started with a professional relationship, and it's developed into a friendship. And so I'm familiar with your career. I'm familiar with a lot of your family life, your personal life. And so I think you've got some interesting stories there. So let's talk about your, maybe not your childhood, but let's talk a little bit about before Van Bortle. So I know your dad owned a paint, I believe it was a manufacturing company, right?
Yeah, he'd been in the paint business. He manufactured industrial polyurethanes, epoxies, and we actually set up a plant in Jamaica, back in '86. I think I was 5 when we moved down there.
Jeez, I was 12.
So that's what kind of kicked off. My dad has flown since he was, I don't know, probably 20 or something. So we would fly back and forth to Jamaica. And that was a really cool experience. And so I've always been obsessed with airplanes. That's really
started early.
Started it. Yeah. My dad taught me how to smuggle, and what I mean, you can't get like certain meats and stuff in Jamaica. So, we'd hide summer sausage in the airplane, clear customs. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope you didn't get your dad in trouble, man. No. Good Lord.
Oh yeah. And I remember the best, this is just a funny side story, but we would get like raw materials in 55-gallon drums you order from Miami. Well, one of those drums had it was like our drum, and it had like Hershey's bars and Cheerios and all the stuff that full to the brim that you couldn't get in Jamaica. So we'd bring that home.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was a really neat experience. I mean, I don't know if you consider Jamaica third world, but it's a lot different there.
So much different
for a kid to be able to experience that. How people live there and everything else.
It's different culture. Sure. Different culture, and being international. I think that's a really cool experience. It's crazy because I haven't met a whole lot of people that their families were into aviation or their fathers. My dad was in boating, and so people find that interesting when we talk about my dad building boats and me marlin fishing, all over the world, things like that. But I bet it was a cool experience to be able to fly with your dad at an early age. I'm sure that sparked your interest for aviation, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell us about when you got your license. When did you actually get started on that process?
It's pretty much after I started taking lessons, whenever I could, it was all, I paid for it myself. So, I mean, as often as I could. I probably took a few like when I was 19 or something, but really got after it when I was, I think 22. I think I got my private when I was 23. So, a little over 20 years ago.
Wow. That's awesome. How many hours do you have now?
Just 3,600.
Wow. That's crazy. A lot of flying.
Yeah. So I did the private, and then then wound up going on a kind of a check ride frenzy, I guess, because I mean, I had one rating on one of them all. So I got that, and I did the instrument commercial multi-engine instructor, CFI MEI, did the ATP, citation type rating, tailwheel, seaplane. So,
Geez, a little bit of everything.
yeah,
all of it.
yeah, I love it though. But when it's kind of like when you really love something, it's kind of like my job.
Yeah,
It's like a 5-year-old working at a toy store.
yeah, I can
So
imagine.
it doesn't feel like work. And when you're studying for stuff like that, you like airplanes, you love airplanes. So it's not, you enjoy studying for it and you excel at it. So
Yeah, that's awesome, man. What's a passion? I think aviation is certainly something people get passionate about. So no doubt about that. That's really cool. So you were exposed to aviation early in life. I'm assuming your career didn't start out in aviation. So started with your dad.
Yeah, and I'd always been in some type of sales. Like when I even out of high school, I sold electronics at Sears. I went to college and I sold cell phones. It was Singular, which is I guess AT&T now, but just a bunch of different things like that. And then I went to work for him doing outside sales. So I would travel a lot and go see, a lot of, drilling companies would buy their product, or truck manufacturers or whatever, all kinds of different places. So
Yeah.
you're on the road a lot and selling paint. And my dad had even told me, I don't like paint, but it makes a living. And I thought about that when he said that, and it's something he did for 40 years. I was like, well, I want to like what I'm doing, and to be honest with you, I wasn't that great at selling paint. I think because there's really no passion for it. Some people have the passion for it, and there's a lot of chemistry that goes into it. You got to understand. And it was something that wasn't fun for me to learn. But anyway, so following that, I was like, well, I really like airplanes. So, and I really like sales and people. So what about selling airplanes? And that all came together. It was really interesting because we were in Wichita Falls and, had just gotten married. And I was like, well, who do I call? So I called somewhere in Amarillo. I think it was like an avionics shop. And I was like, well, I'm going to sell avionics. He was like, well, I'm kind of a one-man shop. I was like, what about selling airplanes? He's like, well, call Abilene Aero. They sell some airplanes down there. And I called Abilene Aero, and they were like, well, we pretty much, I don't really need anybody else here, but if you really want to sell airplanes, call the world's largest Cessna dealer, Van Bortle. Never heard of them. Okay. So
Wow.
Picked up the phone right after that, called Van Bortle. I was like, can I speak to whoever's in charge of hiring for sales? And, what I realize now, it's really hard because he's so busy and all over the place to get George Van Bortle on the phone. All that being said, the receptionist transferred me and I hear, this is George. And, the rest is kind of history. And there's a very low turnover in that department. They, I wouldn't leave them alone because we're like, well, we didn't just check back in a few months. Well, whatever. Well, I would check the next month. And then I came down like 4 times. I met Howard and he's like, well, maybe you should go try selling engines. And, that's what was really funny in the beginning because George and Howard, Howard's the owner, George is the brother. He's a vice president, but, they've pretty much been together, pretty much from the start. But George didn't think I'd be any good at selling airplanes because, I like flying, and his experience with professional pilots, selling wasn't very good because, they didn't know how to manage both things. They're either flying or they're selling and they're not flying, or they're gone on a trip, they're not taking care of their customers and stuff. And Howard said, I think it'll be good. So all that being said, they gave me a shot and that was it. So
that's awesome.
Took a lot of persistence because, I heard no probably 2 or 3 times, maybe 4. I don't know. And then finally got that yes. And
that's awesome. So how many months? Do you remember how long it took to finally get the yes?
Probably 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So they were testing your persistence, which is
I think so. And there was a line of, persistence and just bugging somebody, and you got to find that little line there where you're not like pushing them too hard or whatnot. But it was just that trying to find that perfect line right there to, get somebody to give you a shot.
Deal. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So 13 years you've been at Van Bortle, and you are the sales manager there. You guys have got some other sales people. I believe I heard a fact that since you started selling planes at Van Bortle, you've been the top salesman since. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I love what I do. So,
yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. So top salesman. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard the statement that I think Howard says this about you, so it's got to be true, that you literally sell more airplanes than anyone else in the country.
I guess there's not a lot of data but they're pretty sure that I've sold more airplanes than any one person in the world.
Okay, you really made that sound horrible. So let's try that one more time. I know you're a little bit nervous. There's only 7 or 8 people that are going to watch this, so it's no big deal. Most of those 7, 8 people are probably our family, so it's okay. But let's cut back to this real quick. So I heard it said by, I believe it was Howard, that you literally have sold more planes than anybody in the country.
In the world.
In the world.
That's what they say.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. See, that sounds so much better than you doubting yourself, man.
Wow.
Right? You got to have some confidence as a sales guy. So I love it. So the top salesman at Van Bortle.
I don't want to come across as hoity or anything because that's not what it's all about.
Well, I don't even know what that is. So
I don't know.
It sounded good.
Okay.
We'll have to Google it later.
I don't know
but
what it means either.
It just sounded good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. So top salesman in the world, sold more planes than anybody in the world. And I guess we'll just have to find some data to prove that, maybe. I'm sure we can come up with something, but that's definitely a cool thing to claim to. So with all that being said, really the meat of the story that I want to talk about today is, so success is something that you saw as a child when you're in your dad. You saw him at a successful business that he just sold not long ago. And so you knew what success was all about. Your family was successful. Father was successful. You've seen what it took to build a business, to maintain a business. So you learned a lot of those lessons early. What do you think you saw? What was the number one trait you saw from your dad that you think has contributed to your success? Was there something that stuck out about your dad? Like for me, my dad, it was consistency. My dad was just absolutely focused, and it was always consistency.
Yeah, I would say just good old-fashioned work.
Yeah.
He got up every morning and he was at the office and he did that all day. And in the beginning, I remember some really long days, gone before I got up and not home when I went to bed.
Yeah.
So, they had a lot of challenges over the years. They had I think it was in the 80s, I guess it's when that big oil crisis happened, and all their customers were oil-based. I like what pun on oil-based paint. Get it?
It works. It's a
oil industry.
That's a dad joke, maybe.
Yeah, petroleum industry. But yeah, I saw them go through a lot of challenges too. So, and watching how they manage those, that was
it's cool.
And my mom, and my dad work side by side. So
that's awesome. But you don't see a lot of that today. Amy and I talk about this all the time. When I started doing this, one of the things that we talked about as a couple was that we were going to do everything together, and if I'm invited to speak an event or invited to come to an event, if my wife can't come with me, then I don't go. And so we made a point, like, we want to do everything together. She's really my right hand. She's my rock, and she is my biggest cheerleader, if you will. When I think I can't do something, she encourages me to do it. And so it's crazy because you don't see that a lot today. Back in your parents' generation, you did. Husband and wife typically did work together, but you just don't see a lot of that today. Yeah. So I think it's a really cool example to see. I do, especially in entrepreneurs. So you saw the success, you learned the lessons. Now you're in your own career. You're top salesman in the world. That sounds pretty good. Top salesman in the world. So everything is going great. So I've known you for a few years. I know you sell a lot of planes. I know I've referred a bunch of people to you. Again, absolutely crushing it, right? The finer things in life. We talk about clothes, we talk about watches, we talk about shoes and cars and everything else. And I remember when you bought your dream house. I remember the call you got. You sent me a text and showed me the property. And there's this really badass flying community in Texas, lake. And you can literally taxi to your house. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's called Pecan Plantation, and
is it pecan or pecan? Sometimes there's a difference.
I think it's pecan. Something about pecan just doesn't. It's just
I don't know, man. I think it's a Southern thing, so it's either pecan or pecan. I think if you're really snooty, that's a word. Believe it or not, snooty, if you're snooty, it's pecan. But if you're just a redneck, it's
I'm not saying pecan because it's just wrong. So anyway, let's move on.
All right.
But anyway, yeah, it's a really, really cool place. It's got, you're surrounded by the Brazos River. You have Lake Granbury that backs up to it as well. So there's a marina there. There's a couple golf courses, and there's an air park. Matter of fact, now we have 2 runways. So we have, the original air park, and then we have the other one. It's called the Landings. but it's a cool place. You literally don't have to leave the gates of the place. Inside those gates, you have your own grocery store. There's a um, there's a pharmacy, there's a doctor's office, there's a bank, I mean, all in the
Everything.
gates, and you can go wherever you want on the golf cart. So
That's crazy.
but the really cool, I always thought it would be really cool to, live with your airplane. So, versus, and it's nice too, because like if you're going to do like a little quick weekend trip, before, you go load the car with all your stuff, drive to the airport, load the plane up. Well, now you just take
Load
the
the
bags,
plane.
go right out my back door, across the back porch, through the little gate into the hangar door, load your airplane up, and you're out of there.
That's so awesome.
And it's a little bit far from the office. So that took a little ingenuity, I guess, but I would worked out with Howard on it to make it mutually beneficial, because if I flew like my plane back and forth, I'm going to rack hours up and it's burning a lot of fuel and all that stuff. So we have airplanes, as we mentioned in our inventory. There's some airplanes that, they might not have sold they might have been sitting for a month or something like that. They need to be flown.
Yeah.
Like a boat or anything else. If you don't fly them, you
got to fly.
problems.
Absolutely.
So we rotate those out, or it could be something that came out of annual. So I'll do the flight test on that, before it goes to the customer, and I'll just literally fly it home, put it up, and then bring it back to work the next day. So
it's a hell of a commute, man. Guys have nice cars, but it's really cool about to fly planes to go to
15-minute flight or an hour and 20-minute drive. So yeah, it's nice. And you can't help but when you're like, when I'm on base landing 1-6 at Arlington, you're going right over I-20.
You see I wouldn't call it bumper.
Yeah, I don't want to call it gloating, but you just, sorry guys. And they're just bumper to bumper traffic, and you're just traffic free.
You're definitely flexing on a little bit. There's no doubt about it.
It has its challenges too, though, because we have weather and stuff like that. You're in I didn't really think that part of it through when I moved out there. I was like, well, bad weather days, you just drive. Well, bad weather days, you got even worse traffic, bad driving conditions. So, but for the most part in Texas, it's pretty benign. So I can pretty much fly about it.
Traffic here in North Carolina is different. We don't quite understand that down at the coast, because, it's just different vibe down this way. We don't even have an interstate. So it's pretty laid back. But so I remember getting the text. I remember seeing the house, and I'm like, damn, Randall is like, this is his dream. Like, this is really cool. And I remember how cool it was when you went through the process and you did some renovations, and like everything was going really, really good. And I remember that time in your life, from the outside looking in, it sure seemed like everything was damn near perfect for Randall Funston. Seemed that way. So here's the hook in the whole story, right? So we talk about success as a child. We talk about success through your career. Everybody on the outside looking in is thinking, man, this guy's done it all right. Everything is great. Man, I wish I was Randall. But inside, there was a lot different reality, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know. It's hard to explain. It was just something was kind of empty. Something was missing. So, and you wind up having marriage issues, and, you're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of anybody else either. The only thing I did, a decent job of was taking care of customers at work. And at the end of this, now that I step back and look at all of that, where I try to go into work and working with our customers in a servant type position, it's all about the customer. We take care of the customer. Well, when I was going home, I wasn't doing it. It was the opposite. And I didn't even realize it. Like, wow. I was totally selfish at home, and I didn't even see it. I just cared about me, took care of me. Emily, she did all the work and I didn't even notice all the stuff she was doing and how much work that was. And I wasn't thinking about what she was feeling, what she was thinking, what she was wanting. It was just, and it wasn't on purpose. I didn't intend to ever be totally self-absorbed, but that's what I was.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, and that's where I wound up, and then, I got to a point that, you have a bad day or you want to escape, and you drink or whatever. And, it finally all came to a head, and we wound up separating, and I knew something had to change, I made some drastic changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember those times because, honestly, we were close enough friends that, I knew some things, right? But at the end of the day, I would say 95, 98% of the world would never know anything was wrong with Randall.
No, yeah.
They would never know, right? But inside you were fighting these battles, if you will. And, you know, there's nothing more challenging to a success-driven guy, a salesperson that has the characteristic to go out there and just push and drive sales and accomplish numbers, you know, those kind of things. There's nothing more devastating than knowing that you're failing at something.
Yeah.
And when you look back and you see that you're failing your family, you're failing your wife, you're failing yourself, but everybody else thinks you're crushing it. Like, it's so hard to maintain that, you know, that facade, if you will. It's really hard to do that. Do you know what a facade is?
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard to maintain that. Right. And so I'm assuming there was like a waking moment where you're like, you know, it may look like I'm great, but I'm not great.
No, yeah. I think there for a little while, you know, I knew I was in a flat spin, and I, you know, to use an aviation term, I wasn't doing any corrective action to stop it. And that spin was just getting tighter and faster and going down quicker and quicker and quicker. And, yeah, so I just got to a point, you know, I totally stopped drinking. So no alcohol, you know, and any mind altering, whatever. I needed to get healthy, spiritually, physically, mentally.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things, you know, that I also realized while we would go to church as a family, I wasn't engaged at all those last few years. You know, I was just, I don't know how, when they say it's a slippery slope, it's a slippery slope. When you're, you know, in my, you know, I was going down the slope that I didn't even realize I was going down, I don't think. Or maybe I didn't even care to look. I don't know.
I think that's most of the time in you know, at least from what I've seen over the years, that's exactly what happens. You know, you get to a place and you wake up and you're like, how did I even get here?
Yeah.
You know, because you lie to yourself, right? You cover it up to make yourself feel better, that you think everything is normal, but you know it's not. And so it's good that you caught yourself. I like that you mentioned the spiritual aspect, right? So it doesn't matter what people believe or don't believe. At the end of the day, you knew that there was something more to life than just you.
Yeah.
I know you grew up going to church, and we've talked about that. But you started visiting a church, and I think there was a time you made a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I made a decision as far as my salvation a long time ago, but it, you know, like I said, we had been going to church before we separated, and I just wasn't engaged. Well, that was one thing that I changed too. You know, I did, I guess you would say, a rededication.
Yep.
And really got engaged in church, you know, and then, and I truly believe, you know, God put a lot of people and things together during that time. You know, you're one of those people, to be honest with you. You know, you were right there with me during probably the lowest time of my life, and there's a couple guys at the church as well that I met, and you know, the support there. You know, it's just it. I mean, when you get separated from a spouse, it's not, you know, you're separated from the spouse, you're separated from the kids too.
Absolutely.
I thought I was empty before. When I took a look at my life from the outside, I was like, you don't have anything.
You lost it all.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, and subconsciously I was doing it on purpose, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, but that's, I think it goes down to, I didn't have joy in anything. I didn't enjoy anything. You know, I didn't, you know, we go on a trip or go on a drive or go even flying around. You know, I used to just love it so much or really take it in, and it was just, I didn't enjoy work anymore. I don't know. It was insane. And then all of a sudden, you know, I was like, all this stuff needs to change. Need to get healthy. Need to. So I got engaged in church. I didn't drink anymore. I didn't. One of the really other important things I started doing was really getting, you know, going to the gym. Yeah. So, and before, I thought it was going to be so hard to get started again. It's been so long since I've been at the gym, and it was at first, but I didn't realize how important that is to you mentally. You know, absolutely. Because, and I'm not a morning person at all. So this Randall a year ago, I'd roll out of bed 7:30, 8. I'd been up to 12 or 1 watching whatever, dumb movie on Netflix, whatever. This Randall now was up at 5 to 5:30 in the morning and in the gym 30 minutes later, which is, I never would have guessed that, but I got to the point where I enjoy it. And because before I was like, I would go in the evening and stuff like that, and what would happen, I'm still talking to customers in the evening, like at 7 o'clock in Texas, it's still 5 in California. So that
It's a
wasn't a
lot
good
of hours.
time where I was always getting interrupted with calls. I was like, I need to just start getting up earlier in the morning. And now I love getting up early in the morning. And not only that, it sets the course of the rest of my day.
Yeah. It does.
So, and you feel better, you look better. But yeah. And so basically drastic change. I knew it was absolutely essential. It was necessary. I got into some books and some learning and really digging into, what was going on with me. And here a year later, family's back.
That's awesome, man.
I feel healthy. I'm happy. I have
awesome.
joy in stuff. I'm not, it's just,
that's awesome.
It's incredible.
That's awesome, man. But that's awesome.
Yeah. I think I went, I guess before I thought like things and all that will make you happy. It doesn't.
No, it's not.
And I thought buying that house or whatever, well, that's just going to fix everything. No, it caused more problems because you got projects you got to do and more stress on the marriage and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think a lot of it too is perception. I think, people get a much different perception of reality, and social media plays a big part in that. I'm not one of those guys that just hates on social media, because I think it's got a great place, in our society, in our world. I think it does have a negative side of it as well. But I think a lot of people just have that false sense of reality because they see what's posted and what's shared on social media, but it's not real. You know what I mean? There's so much of it that's not real. And so talking about chasing things, I think that's interesting. I've talked a lot of, I've got a lot of very, very wealthy friends, very, very wealthy folks within my network. And it's amazing to me that I ask this question a lot and I get the same answer. There's nothing better than buying things. People love that feeling, right? You get that dopamine rise, you buy something, it feels so great, but it doesn't last. I think about the coolest shit that I've bought in my life and how awesome I felt. And I woke up the next morning and it wasn't as awesome. It was like, okay, cool. What's next? Right. But there's something to be said about having peace within your heart, having peace in your life, things being right at home, things being right with your relationships, helping other people. I talk about it all the time. Like, there's nothing that replaces the feeling you get when you help somebody. There's nothing I've ever bought that gives me that joy like when I help somebody and I'm able to help somebody. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. You ruined it a little bit because you said your family's coming back. I was going to wait to then say that, but that's okay. That's okay. So I think it's awesome. I remember talking to you in some of those low times, and I remember exactly what you just described. Like, you literally felt empty. You were going through the motions, but life was it was kind of empty.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and this is like right after we separated and stuff. No, I wasn't suicidal, but you have a mindset if something were to happen, whatever, like when you get to that point where it doesn't even bother you, like it doesn't scare you or anything like that, you need it's time to do something
about it.
And really that
it's one of those customers calling on the budget.
Yeah.
Call them back.
Hope so. Anyway, but yeah, and kind of as far as the success in sales, it's not that I'm some awesome salesperson or anything else. It really came down to the key was one thing: just taking care of somebody else before yourself. And there was a book that George told me about when I first started working there. It's called 1 Minute Salesperson. And that's what it's a short book, and it's really all it's about. It's about, hey, take care of their needs and then your needs will be met. Right.
Yep.
And that's it. Because when that customer knows that, whether he's buying $100,000 airplane or a $2 million jet or whatever, doesn't matter to me. I don't care. I'm going to try to find out what he wants and then help him find the best one. Right.
Yeah.
And when he knows that, he sees that that's what you're actually doing, that, that goes a long ways. And, you know, he might buy the $100,000 airplane, but you've got his trust. He knows you're looking out for him, and he knows you're going to take care of him in the future. And, you know, it's not about that deal. It's about all, you know, all the stuff we're going to do. It's not just that selling them more airplanes in the future either. That's great. And I have a lot of repeat customers, but what's really cool is walking with him through that journey, you know, that journey of their aviation. And that's another thing that's really cool about it is normally it's not something that they have to have. It's something they want. So they're really excited about it and all that. Anyway, I say all that because, you know, it really parallels with, you know, how you know, what I believe spiritually, you know, whoever wrote that book and all that stuff, that concept goes back a long time because that's
it's biblical.
That was Christ.
Yep.
That's what he was built on, to serve, not to be served. And, you know, and that's what's so crazy, because I would do that at work and I'd go home and it was just the opposite. I never saw it. You know, I was a selfish ale. I really was. And, you know, I didn't even see it. And now I'm like, you know, first of all, and not that, you know, I love you, Emily, and if you're watching, and but, you know,
she's one of the 8 that'll be watching.
We're really, you know, we have a great, you know, relationship. We enjoy being around each other again and all that other stuff. But the other part of it too, there is you know, you don't realize how much that woman did until she's not there. Because I mean, it was nonstop. It was either if I was sitting still, I forgot to do something. You know, I didn't go to the grocery store, or I didn't do laundry, or I didn't do, you know, whatever. But anyway, but that was probably the biggest aha moment. Was, you know, I was just totally
oblivious.
Totally selfish, and I put my focus. I got myself healthy, so then I could take care of everybody else. Because I wasn't healthy at all, so I wasn't able to do anything for anybody else.
I think so many people discredit what their spouse does, you know, and we take it for granted. I think, you know, I know there's no way I can navigate life without my spouse. There's no way. And, you know, I say it all the time. I mean, Amy is my best friend, but I could not do life without her. I mean, I couldn't. And so I'm at the place in life now where I don't have to, which is a great place. You know, we get to do everything together, and we literally do. And people are like, y'all are so boring. Don't you want time apart? No, when your relationship is right, you want to be together. It's crazy to think that, but when your relationship is right, you want to spend time together. So anyway, we'll have to do another podcast on marriage one day. So we'll talk about another one. But going back to the 1 minute salesman, I think it's great. So 30 years ago, when I began my career in sales, my original business mentor gave me 2 books, The 1 Minute Salesman and The 1 Minute Manager. And I've given hundreds and hundreds of those books away over the years because it's a great book. It's a simple book. It's short. It's, you know, most people don't like to read. Like, I don't like to read. So it's a short book, but it's got such amazing truths in it, you know, and my whole sales philosophy in my entire career is, you know, people buy from who they know, like, and trust. It's a simple fact. It's relationships. And if you build the relationship, the price doesn't matter. Nobody's going to ask you the price because it's about the relationship, right? And so I tell my clients all the time, you want to be the guy, right? You want to be literally the guy. Like, I know for me, a few minutes ago, we were talking about a truck, and I'm like, yeah, I got a guy. Let me call them and see if they've got this truck. If I need a plane, I know who I call. You know, I call Randall, right? And so it's great when you develop that relationship with customers, that you're their guy, because it's not just their relationship with you, but then they tell their friends, right? It's an easy way of marketing, right? And then you've automatically got the trust. You don't have to earn it as hard, because you've already got the trust because their friend told them about you. So it's a great concept, just taking care of other people's needs, and treating them like you want to be treated. Like, it's a real simple, it's not difficult to be a great salesperson. It really isn't.
It's the easiest. I mean, that career is like, I mean, it comes with challenges, you know, but I mean, it's one of the most fun and easiest parts of my life, you know, that was, and I got even through all that, you know, because I had to take a lot of time away, to do all this work I did, you know, in the last, you know, I guess several months after that. You know, the owners of that company took care of me just like they always did their customers. And that's where you know, they really showed me what they were made of, because they're like, you know, your family, you know, you know, they were right there by my side.
That's awesome.
They could have, if I had been there, 6 months or something, it'd probably be different, but they knew who I was on the inside, and they had, helped me grow for years and years and years. And when I got into the trenches, they were right there with me as well. So
that's awesome, man.
That's awesome. There,
that's loyalty.
That just says who those guys are.
Yeah.
So
they believe in you, and that's how they treat their customers. That's not
exactly.
That's not fake. So
that's not fake at all. So.
That's impressive. That's awesome. So, been through the trenches, back on the mountaintop. Your family is actually moving back in this weekend. Next week.
Yeah. We did want to take the kids out of school mid-semester. So
about 10 more days.
Yeah.
Family's going to be back together again. How does that make you feel?
Great. I mean, and we spend all the time we can together now, but her sister lives about 100 miles away. She happened to have a rent house. So at the time, since we just moved to a brand new community and all that stuff, I mean, literally all this, we separated a month after we moved into this house. So, and we didn't know anybody or anything. So given the distance, it was hard to do, but so they have been up there, and which has made the airplane thing really nice because I can zip up there, in 30 minutes. And so, but there's been a lot of running back and forth. I'm either picking them up or bringing them back to the house, or I'm going up there for the weekend. And so it's been a little exhausting, but we all wanted to spend a lot of time with each other, and that's what had to be done. And now, they're just going to be home. We're going to go take a cool trip week after next to Marco Island and go hang out. And it's just,
then you got a Bahamas trip coming up soon.
With you.
And then we got to get the family here. So that's definitely, we got some plans for the summer, but that's awesome. So to wrap all this up, to kind of package it all together, I got a couple of questions for you. So you're not nervous anymore, right?
No, not really.
I promise you, out of that 7 or 8 people, there's probably only 6 left watching. So we're all good. Okay. So if we package it all up and wrap it all up, let's put it into a couple of questions. So the first one I have for you is, throughout this process, whatever you want to call it, throughout this process, what did you learn about life and priorities?
Oh, priorities huge. I mean, literally the priority list that I've always learned that when in one ear and out the other is, God, family, work. There's another one after that. Or you know what I'm talking about? But anyway, maybe it's 3, but it's God, family, work. If everything's not right with this is going to be messed up. This Correct. Is going to be messed up, and on we go. But yeah, I put everybody knows I love my job, but I put all of my everything into it and really deprive my family a lot. Yeah. Not even realizing what I was doing. I was like, well, I'm providing and stuff like that. So I'm going, no. I think she would be the first one to say, no, I would be just as happy in a house the fraction of the size and living over here or whatever, and just having a husband and a dad. Yeah. So, but yeah, prioritizing definitely. Because when everything is good at home, when things weren't good at home, I might not have realized it, but I wasn't good at work.
No, definitely
I didn't want to take phone calls and stuff like that and all that stuff. But when stuff is good spiritually, stuff is good at home, there's, full of joy.
Yep.
Even on that flight in the morning, I fly every day, but I'm like, man, this is
what a
cool.
blessing.
This is great.
Awesome.
I love it again. The family's good. Enjoy. I'm so much more engaged. I remember times my brain was so distracted when I get home. I'm on the phone all day at work normally.
Yeah.
When I get home, I don't want to talk to anybody on the phone. Matter of fact, I really didn't want to talk to anybody at all. And I think back of these moments, and there was times like when my daughter was standing in front of me and just talking to me, and I am just gone. I'm sitting right there in front of her. And my brain was somewhere else. I'm either thinking about work or all this other stuff. And Emily would be like, "Hey, Faith's talking to you right now." I was like, "Oh, sorry, Faith. She's standing right in front of me. It's crazy." But that's another thing as well. I'm just being so much more engaged with them in that relationship, that connection. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. No doubt about it. That's awesome. What, throughout this journey, what did you learn about success? So let's talk about the professional aspect.
Success isn't how much money you made or how many airplanes you sold or whatever. That's definitely not my definition of success anymore.
That's awesome.
And being a successful person is someone who's, you're squared away spiritually. You got your, things are in order at home. you're being the husband you need to be, you're being the dad that you need to be, other people come before you. That's a successful person.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's someone who's gotten it figured out. And I think back on, like, because I can't let myself go down the slope, because I can get into a regret slope pretty quick.
Yep.
Like, why didn't I figure this out? Or why didn't I? But when you think about it, my kids are 7 and 10. Yeah, there's a lot of years wasted there, but we got a lot left. In other words, it could have been a lot worse. Yep. So, it was, it happened when it happened for a reason, and I am where I am for a reason. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. It's good that you learn the lesson. I think a lot of people don't learn it. They don't learn it at all, or they don't learn it in time, but they don't learn it at all. I know I tell people all the time, I've had some amazing success over a 30-year career. But I can tell you, and it makes me emotional, but I can tell you who paid the price for my success. And it was my children. There's no doubt about it. And, and the thing is, I'm thankful that I realized that later in life. I'm thankful that I have a great, well, for years I prayed that I wouldn't have tears. And then I had to pray that I got them back. And now that I do, I'm not sure I want them anymore, because I cry over everything. But, don't tell people I'm not Big Bad Rollins, please. But it's interesting because my kids did pay the price for my success. They are the ones that made the sacrifice. I'm thankful that I realized that, and I can make up for that the best I can. But that's the catch about time. You can't get time back. Once it's gone, right? So, going back to priorities, realizing that time is so precious, it's good that you realize that now, because you can't get that time back. So make the best out of what you have left, I think, is one of the comments you made about, I can't go back and fix that, but I can fix moving forward. Right. And that's really what it's all about, making up for, not really making up the time that you lost, but making the most out of the time you have moving forward, because you have plenty of time. Yeah. At least we hope so anyway. Right. That's good. All right. So I got to ask you one kind of funny question before we close this out. So, not really funny, but what is your favorite airport? If you only have like 3 seconds to answer, your favorite airport you've ever flown to?
Like the airport itself or the location?
So you took way too long. Favorite airport you've ever flown into?
It's got to be probably Staniel Key.
Staniel Key. All right. That's where we're going in before too long.
Those
all right, cool.
They're incredible.
All right. So Staniel Key. So what is, in 3 seconds or less, what is your favorite airplane you've ever flown?
Citation.
Yep. That's fair enough. And who is your favorite customer you've ever flown with?
You.
Thank God you got it right. I was hoping you were going to get that right. Okay. All right. So on a serious note to close it out. So the 7 or 8 people that might be watching this, they are on the other side of that camera right there that we barely look at, right? I hate looking at
2 are probably my mom and dad or something. So
that's probably right. So looking at that camera, Randall, that grew up in a great household, saw success, traveled the world. Randall, that found great success at Van Bortle, top airplane salesman in the entire world, have everything in the world you can think of, his dream home and everything, found the lowest of lows, the lowest of lows. And a year later is back on the mountaintop again.
Yeah.
What would you do different? Tell them.
What would I do different than what I did in the last year?
What would you do different? Would you do anything different?
Well, obviously, I would have, if I had the choice, I would have figured this out a long time ago. Okay. So, I mean, there were signs everywhere. I didn't take the time. Either I didn't want to see them or I just ignored them. But, that everybody else could see it. But, and kind of one of the things that I try not to do, but I do, is like when things are going bad, I crawl into a hole. So people know.
Yep.
My mom's like the best. I mean, she can hear like something in my voice when okay, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, nothing's wrong.
Sounds like
okay, I guess something's, whatever. But anyway, but when you don't hear from me for a while or something like that, usually, it's not a good sign. But what would I change? I would have
noticed the signs earlier.
Looked at the signs, take corrective action then and there, fix it, move on, not letting everything compile to, the position I was in, it's taking people all the way out, down,
sure.
the things that I lost is what I needed to lose. Because I learned really quick what was most important.
Yeah.
Because, at the end of the day, when I'm looking at my life and all that stuff, I could care less about that bank account or that house or that airplane in the hangar or whatever. I didn't care, and, market's taking a little, a downturn. Things are slower and stuff like that. And normally, I think back before I probably would have been freaking out and all that. I'm not freaking out. It's just that, market has ups and downs, but what was like, I didn't care, and when I realized I didn't care, that's
a sign.
How I learned what was important. And now that, all that's taken care of and stuff, I'm loving working with my customers and all that stuff. And I'm, really, got that thing going again. There's been a saying I heard before I wanted to mention. Have you heard, like, don't waste your hurts?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's some really hurtful things are going through my mind and heart and all that stuff from the stuff that's happened. And, you got regret, remorse and all that. So I just use it, learn from it. The only mistake I'll make right now is if I don't use that as a tool and learn from it, and do something different or better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be the true mistake.
The interesting thing is, so I asked that question because most people wouldn't expect me to ask a question like, what would you do different? Because it's obvious, right? Well, I wouldn't let that happen. That's what most people would answer, right? Yeah. But what happened needed to happen.
It did.
To bring you back to where you are, right? Yeah. So that's the right answer. Notice the signs and make action or take action, and make sure your priorities are right. Like, those are the two things you said that you would do different. But again, you didn't say not let that happen, because again, you needed that to happen to get you to where. So I love the way you answered it. And people, I've asked that question before and people are like, I just wouldn't let that happen. That's not really the answer, because again, that's what makes you who you are. It's not like God didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, no, he did. And he knew exactly what I needed. And even doing all these changes, you're praying and you're asking for all this stuff, and he wasn't giving me what I was praying for. But what he did do, he gave me what I needed when I needed it.
Absolutely.
And he knew that better than I did. And it was, whether there's a lot of things that took place that I, too many things to make it circumstantial. I mean, it was really pretty incredible, and it had to do with some of the people I met and all this other stuff during that time. And I look at the whole thing, so we wound up being separated for almost a year, and that's a long time. Now, I mean, we've been together a lot, in the last 6 months and stuff like that, but and it's been horribly hard. It's horrific not getting to kiss your kids goodnight, every
tough.
night, stuff like that. But I think now, like, if you were to go back and ask me a year ago, like, would I have traded this experience and not have to have gone through that? This is what you'll get if you don't go through it. You're going to pretty much have what you have now. Or if you go through this, it's going to be a horrible, horrible whatever year and all that stuff. But it'll be like this, I think I would go through it again. Because right now it's just so awesome. Like, it's
perspective, and it's the value. It's crazy because as you were talking, I was thinking, if we went back 13 months, just for conversation's sake, said, Randall, what would you change about your life? You'd say nothing. But if we went back 10 months, you'd say everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy how that changes that quick. But but man, I think it's awesome. Again, I think there's people out there that are listening that are going through struggles. They've been on the top of the mountain. They've been in the valley. Maybe they're clawing their way back up, trying to get back there again. So I think your advice of priorities and seeing the red flags, making the changes, putting the structure, putting in the work, I think all of those things, certainly are relatable. And if folks are listening today and for whatever reason you're going through these struggles, listen to the examples that Randall's given, because it's truly the easy answer to change your life. There's no question about it. There is hope, right?
Oh,
there is hope. And so definitely. That's awesome, man. So tell people how they can find you. Randall Funston, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, all of those things. And then, of course, Van Bortle, if you look them up, I think you've got a picture on the website now, don't you?
I think so. Yeah.
If not, I'm gonna get with Justin over that. We got to get you a picture.
Okay, we'll do.
Make sure we get you a picture. But
our email is just randall@vanbortle.com.
Randall@vanbortle.com. And man, I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna come back and we'll do this again in a couple of years, and we'll see what next mountaintop you accomplish, because I think there's a lot more in store for Randall.
Yeah, I don't know what the future holds, but I'm super excited about it. 'Cause I don't know, yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you having you on, man. Appreciate the friendship as always. And guys, make sure that you make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow us, and we'll be on to episode number 4 soon. So thank you for joining.
Thanks.